are sitting at the very first Stoic Arts conference. This thing wouldn't happen without our hosts, and to start that all off, we've got Melinda Latour. So please, a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so delighted to welcome you to this really special conference, bridging fields that are not often brought together. Stoicism, music, art, experience, creativity, beauty, joy, all in one. Humor, which I'm very excited about. Which we don't often think about Stoic humor. You're going to learn about this today, but it's going to be fantastic. Now, whether you're already an experienced Stoic or hearing about it for the first time, this conference is for you. Likewise, whether you're a professional artist, a seasoned musician, an avid fan, or just a creative dabbler or listener, I hope that our explorations throughout this day will inspire you to greater appreciation and integration of music and the arts throughout your daily life. Throughout each talk and workshop, you will learn strategies for deepening your engagement with the core themes and principles of Stoicism. And even more importantly, you will encounter new ways of practicing it by engaging your mind and senses with the full spectrum of artistic experiences. So I'm now going to pass the baton and we'll introduce each. Do you want to say, are you going to pass the baton to Catherine or Aurelius?
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine. The Stoic curtsy. I'm really happy to be here. I'm part of the Modern Stoicism team. I've travelled over from Scotland, so it's really nice to be in Boston with you all. I just want to encourage you to happily meet people, turn to the person next to you, don't be shy, make connections. We'll do a lot of talking here, but also, I guess, the invitation is to connect so that you can have people to continue the Stoic journey with once you leave these halls later today. So that's the message from me. I'm going to hand over to Brittany Pollard.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi everyone, I'm Brittany Pollard, also part of the Modern Stoicism team. I am so happy to be here with you today. This is the culmination of years of thinking about Stoicism and the arts. So very happy you are all here with us, but I think it's also the beginning, as Melinda alluded to. This is the very first time in probably thousands of years, well, hundreds of years, that anyone has really thought to bring Stoicism and the arts together. So you are here making history with us today, and I really appreciate that. Also want to say thank you to Melinda and Tufts University, all the amazing student workers and staff here, and the university. They're doing an amazing job, so thank you. Thank you also to my fellow organizers from Modern Stoicism, Phil and Catherine. They are spectacular. And of course to our presenters who you are going to be seeing throughout the day. They are incredible people, and I know you are going to enjoy them as much as we have. So thank you, hope you enjoy your day.
I'm Phil Yanov. You probably don't remember me. Look at this team, folks. Look at you, all in the same room. Let me tell you what is happening here today. You're in a Stoic bubble, right? So you're in a bubble. Basically, you've got the whole world is sort of gone, and right here for us, right now, we're here together doing this thing. If you view from above it, there's all of the messy world. There's those kids out on the Tufts campus. God knows what they're sleeping right now, but they'll be doing other fun stuff. But right here, in and of this moment, we are sharing this energy, and it's the opportunity, primarily, I think, for Stoics to realize we are not alone. We've practiced this, we always talk about podcast Stoics, bookstore Buddhists and podcast Stoics, right? We came to this by listening to a podcast, and then we thought we were the only one. You go to the bookstore, there's a bunch of books, but there's just me. Now we're all together. Don't let anything from the outside burst the bubble today. While we're here, make friends, talk to people. I came to Stoicism in this very way, right? Someone introduced me in a group. I did that thing in a group. I read a book. I went to another book. And then COVID hit. And I reached out to Donald and Massimo and said, hey, can I help? And here we are. And that's how I became part of the Modern Stoicism team. It was due to a clerical error. I am on the Modern Stoicism team, but I'm pretty sure that no one knew what they were up to when they allowed that to happen. But I'm here now, and they're having trouble getting rid of me because we keep up and showing these things. Thank you to Melinda. Thank you to Catherine. Thank you to Brittany. Thank you to Tufts. We are here doing something only nerds would like to do. So let's do it together. Thank you for being here.
And on that note, everyone, we'll begin. Have you all got a copy of your program? Do refer to it because there's biographical details in there of our speakers. There are abstracts to give you a bit of an overview of what everyone's going to be talking about. But it's now time for me to introduce your first speakers. It's the first panel of the day. So would everyone like to pop up and sit up here, or how do you want to do this? We've got Melinda Latour, Christiana Olfert and Ranjini George, who are joining us on in the first panel. Would you like to come and sit up here for the panel? Yeah, come on up. It's up to you. How would you feel more comfortable? I think we all want to see you. Come on up here. Yeah. All right. So, without further ado, your panel one. There'll be 3 short talks. Melinda Latour is going to start the panel and is going to talk about how to enjoy music like a Stoic. Listen carefully. Am I allowed to say the thing? Okay, well, Melinda's going to talk about it. Christiana Olfert will talk about resilience and the Stoic advice to try your best, and Ranjini George, a Zen monk and a Roman emperor, lessons in impermanence and creativity. We're going to have some time for a Q&A, so as you're listening to the speakers, you might want to compose a few questions for them, but I'll go and disappear, and over to you, Melinda.
Okay, thank you, everyone. In 2012, rap and hip-hop icon T-Pain dropped his 3rd mixtape, a genre-blurring, guest-packed project boldly titled Stoic. Known for his unapologetic use of auto-tune, T-Pain has long been a lightning rod in music world, drawing both adoration and ridicule in equal measure. Some hail him as a sonic pioneer, others dismiss him as a fraud or a gimmick. But one thing's certain, he helped turn Cher's robotic vocals on Believe from a quirky experiment into what scholars recognize as the defining sound of popular music of an entire generation. Much like his polarizing vocal effects, which are loved and loathed by listeners, Stoic landed with mixed reviews. Writing for Spin shortly after its release, Brandon Soderbergh called the mixtape charming yet sloppy, citing its chaotic genre mashups, abrupt transitions, and lack of cohesion. Still, he couldn't ignore its flashes of brilliance, noting some awesomely terrible or terribly awesome moments. When T-Pain named his 2012 mixtape Stoic, he wasn't just making a statement about sound. He had a terrible several years, by the way. For those of you who know T-Pain, 2009, his album got really bad reviews. Usher was criticizing him. There was a great deal of public, really cruel public criticism of his work. And in many ways, Stoic was actually his attempt to grapple with very deeply difficult personal circumstances. Really, the being in the spotlight and undergoing intense criticism of your artistic and personal work. Now, he wasn't just making a statement about sound in this title. He was declaring independence from the commercial music machine. The mixtape is called Stoic, he wrote. That means a person that's able to take great amounts of pain without showing emotion. It's pretty much everything I'm trying to do, however I want to do it. This is just total freedom for me right now. Now, this was a bold move, and one that tapped into a familiar cultural shorthand. Today, being Stoic, for those of you who are not already experienced in the Stoic tradition, often people know this word from the lowercase adjective, which is generally used as someone who is kind of an emotionally stiff or rigid person, a kind of emotionally detached kind of person. the unflinching, poker-faced figure who endures hardship without blinking. It's Mr. Spock from Star Trek, not Marvin Gaye. So it's no surprise that most people don't imagine a Stoic with a guitar in their hands, or swaying along to the music. For if you assume that Stoics are about shutting down emotion, you might logically conclude that a proper, practicing Stoic would avoid music altogether, especially the kind that stirs the soul and sends shivers down your spine. If the Stoic goal is to tame emotional extremes, wouldn't that clash with music's raw power to arouse, express, and provoke our deepest emotional possibilities? Now, it's a fair question, but here's the twist. That tension between philosophy and feeling isn't as clear-cut as it seems. For as those of you who are already readers of the Stoics already know, Stoicism isn't about emotional numbness or suppression, but rather about emotional management. In other words, the Stoics weren't trying to flatten human experience. They were trying to optimize it by offering tools for navigating life's turbulence with clarity, resilience, and compassion. Now, surprisingly, T-Pain's Stoic Mixtape echoes that deeper tradition. Beneath its swagger and sonic experimentation lies a subtle emotional arc, one that touches on themes central to Stoic thought. Money, the price of fame, the cost of distraction, suicide, lust, pride, poverty, and grief. The mixtape invites listeners into an immersive sonic experience, one that resonates with the Stoic journey of confronting life's hardest truths. Now, to be clear, T-Pain Stoic will not teach you Stoicism in a textbook sense, but it might just offer a soundtrack for living it. Now, what exactly is a Stoic, and what does it mean to live like one? And I'm going to give a very brief summary. There are others who would much more have more expertise in this area, but since I know that we have some people who might be new to this tradition, I wanted to take this moment to give a very brief overview. Actually, no, I'm actually going to play you a little bit of music first before we do that. Forgot I wanted to play this for you. It's also a reminder to turn off your phones. But I love this track. Because think about how
Man, my shit be going off. Listen! Nappy boy.
Will somebody please answer that?
Man, my shit be going off. Super early in the...
you can listen to one. But I love this track because he weaves in one of the sonic symbols that we're all so familiar with, our cell phones, in the way in which it actually pulls us into a cognitive experience. We often react. Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. He pulls us into a sonic experience through a very familiar, really a kind of sonic metaphor. He weaves it throughout the entire track, which is really about attention and about the ways in which our attention is stolen, often through things like, as you know, our phones. We suddenly are like, oh, there it is. So he actually does something quite brilliant in this track by weaving that cell phone ring into a kind of message, a sonic story about attention and fame and how we actually might recover attention. So coming back to what is Stoicism, a few core principles. Happiness isn't dictated by circumstances. That's the first one. It's accessible to everyone because genuine fulfillment doesn't depend on external factors like wealth, status, or luck, but emerges from within ourselves. A second principle is that Stoics teach that our emotions aren't random or uncontrollable forces, but that they're directly shaped by the way we think about and interpret the world. Change your perceptions, they'll say, and you might change your emotional reality. Third, adversity is universal and unavoidable. This is the part that makes people sometimes think, oh, why are they so grim? But it's actually a really important message. And it teaches us that we should expect and prepare for hardships, training ourselves to remain steady and resilient, not only during smooth sailing, but through life's storms. Fourth, they taught that true strength comes from understanding what we can and cannot control. Stoics emphasize focusing our energy on our own thoughts and actions, the only things we genuinely command, while calmly accepting that almost everything else lies beyond our direct influence. And finally, Stoics remind us that mastering these principles doesn't happen overnight. It demands patience, ongoing effort, and realistic expectations. Although perfection is likely unattainable, we can celebrate the meaningful progress we achieve on our lifelong journey toward wisdom and inner joy. Now, although Stoicism was developed in ancient times, its approach to managing intense and destructive emotions has attracted a dedicated following throughout the centuries. In recent decades, there's been a renewed surge of interest in applying Stoic principles to modern life, with a flood of books, podcasts, conferences, and online forums, many spearheaded by Modern Stoicism, who is our co-host of this conference, and inviting people from all walks of life to explore this ancient philosophy that offers so much for use for life today. Now, where does music fit into all of this? And I would say many of the core Stoic principles have a kind of musical element. They use musical metaphors in really interesting ways. Particularly the idea of practice and progress is one of the key themes. Just like a musician, you don't just say, okay, I'm gonna understand music and I'm gonna become a musician. You practice it. It's a daily kind of commitment that you grow over time. Now, perhaps because of that, or perhaps through other roots, many artists today are interested in Stoicism. T-Pain is just one of many prominent pop figures across the eras who have shown some interest, whether personally or in their work, in Stoicism. LL Cool J, another rapper, has discussed the benefits he has found from reading the works of both ancient and modern Stoics. Action Bronson recently released a track titled Marcus Aurelius on his 5th studio album, Only for Dolphins, in 2020. Twista's Get Me 2004, as well as Lupe Fiasco's Light Work from 2011, directly reference Marcus Aurelius in their lyrics. And several years later, Fiasco actually recommended to his followers how important reading Stoic philosophy has been for him. On July 7th, 2016, he tweeted, "If you want to speak with me, go read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, so we can start on the same page. Until then, I can't help you." Now, it's not only rap bringing attention to Stoicism. A surprising array of popular music genres have contributed to a kind of vast soundtrack of popular Stoicism. The jazz and soul reflections of Nina Simone and Shirley Horn, classic rock anthems by Pink Floyd and Rush, the electronic musings of supergroup Depeche Mode, mainstream country ballads by artists like Tim McGraw and Rodney Crowell, current rock bands like Thrice and the Spanish group Zeno and the Stoics, the technical metal of Lamb of God and Gojira, and the chill ambient sounds of lo-fi carry musical strains of Stoicism into the ears of everyday listeners. Despite the pervasive Stoic influence in mainstream popular music cultures, past and present, the role of music within this tradition has been largely ignored. Now, this is not surprising because most of the ancient Stoic writings dedicated to music and the arts are lost. We only know about them at all because their titles are tantalizingly listed in later writings. The small number of ancient Stoic works that remain rarely mention music and the arts directly. And when they do, their comments often seem rather negative and dismissive, only mentioning music and their warnings against vapid entertainment and the sort of addictive pleasures that distract from more serious and meaningful pursuits. Now, for this reason, some hardcore Stoic practitioners populating social media groups today are worried that the philosophy might be too intellectual to indulge in the sensory and immersive experience of music. Some have sadly chosen to limit their own musical experiences, thinking this will enhance their ability to cultivate and benefit from Stoic ideals like internal freedom and self-reliance. And others take a more selective approach, acknowledging the usefulness of Stoic techniques in some areas of life, but assuming that Stoicism has little to offer when it comes to something like music. Both of these approaches miss the potential to understand Stoicism through music and to better experience musical practices through Stoicism. Now, the ancient Stoics were surprisingly enthusiastic defenders of music and the arts, and they courageously embraced the full range of music's rational and emotive possibilities. The founder of Stoicism, Zeno of Citium, reportedly marveled at the power of musical sound to move the emotions through its fundamental order and rationality. When Zeno walked by a musician singing to the stringed lyre, he commented to his students, "Come, let us observe what harmony and music, gut and sinew, wood and bone send forth when they partake of reason, proportion, and order." This awe of music turns out to be one of Zeno's most cited quotes, being circulated in numerous sources throughout European history. Perhaps most famously, Shakespeare, a confirmed Stoic enthusiast, rendered Zeno's words in Much Ado About Nothing. "Now divine air, now is his soul ravished. Is it not strange that sheep's guts should hale souls out of men's bodies?" Zeno's response towards music models an appreciation of music as a reflection of the ordered logic of the universal logos. For each note within a musical series sounds within a system of parts and wholes that are made beautiful and meaningful through their relationship to one another. Following this pattern, Stoics believed that music has the power to engage both the intellectual mind and the physical body simultaneously, bridging rationality and feeling. Seneca's 108th letter agreed that, quote, "Just as our breath gives out a clearer sound when it is drawn through the long, narrow passage of the trumpet and pours out from the broader opening at the end, so the narrow necessity of song makes our meanings clearer," end quote. Elsewhere, Seneca clarifies that the power of song is not only about increased comprehension of texts and concepts, but includes our emotional response. Seneca's 94th letter concludes that, quote, "Whether woven into the fabric of song or condensed into prose proverbs, we can see that such maxims need no special pleader. They go straight to our emotions and help us, simply because nature is exercising her proper function." We can see then that it is the special union of rational thought and musical feeling that gives songs their transformative potential. Now, following this argument, Stoics appreciated music for both its moral and aesthetic qualities. In other words, it's both useful and a kind of experience that we can find beautiful awe, we can appreciate for its style, for its texture, but it's not a war between the useful and the beautiful. Now, this is good news for all of the musicians and creatives interested in how the arts can support Stoic practices. And some of the questions that have been driving my own inquiry into this subject are, does music and other art shaped by Stoic principles have a particular sound or quality? This is often a first question people ask me. Can instrumental music hold as much meaning as songs without words? What value do aesthetics, pleasure, and beauty play in engaging our minds and bodies? Should we focus on developing our musical skills and taste, or can we find equal value in amateur music and other less polished musical experiences that are part of our everyday life? These are the kinds of questions we need deeper exploration into if we're to fully understand how music might fit into a Stoic way of life. I love the idea of a massive Stoic mixtape. Imagine a compilation of tracks by various artists in every musical genre imaginable that spans across the history of Stoicism, all the way from Zeno in ancient Greece to the present. What musical sounds, lyrics, and creative elements would we hear? How would this mixtape reveal how Stoics specifically, over time, have expressed their philosophical practice in music? And more importantly, how could this Stoic mixtape transform our everyday musical horizons, opening up new insights into the value of musical creation, performance, and especially engaged listening? Now, encountering a philosophical tradition like Stoicism through the channels of popular culture presents a number of challenges. Unlike philosophical treatises, songs and music videos rarely develop ideas in a systematic manner. Like poetry, literary fiction, and film, popular music often borrows, mixes, and adapts philosophical concepts for artistic purposes that intentionally obscure the clarity of the original ideas. Art that is too direct in its moral or educational aims typically falls flat and loses its audience, while the most successful creative works often resist easy interpretation, sometimes intentionally creating ambiguity to encourage a multiplicity of interpretations. And thus, for this reason, we see in popular music's expressions of Stoicism many different levels of engagement, from rather undeveloped Stoic references. Some of the rap and hip-hop pieces I mentioned just kind of mention Stoicism, but we're not really sure what else they're doing with it. Other times, we might see examples where it's very clearly resonating with Stoicism, but Stoicism is never mentioned. And then other times, we have artists telling us quite directly, I'm actually reading the Stoics, and they'll tell us, hey, this was actually inspired by, X philosophical work. Now, I'm in the process of actually publishing a book on these themes, exploring the full range of these encounters with Stoicism through popular music. It's going to be titled How to Enjoy Music Like a Stoic, Popular Music and Emotion from Pink Floyd to T-Pain. And I actually, this week, just signed a contract with Oxford University Press, and I expect that the book will be released into 2027, so stay tuned. So this is going to be what that's going to be like. Now, unlike most Stoics today, I discovered this philosophy through music. It was 2013. I was an eager doctoral student doing research on music in 16th century France at the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, when I stumbled upon an unusual repertoire of moral and philosophical songs that resisted easy categorization as either sacred or secular music. These were not religious songs intended for church services, and they were equally far from the raunchy songs about love and sex popular at the time. These moral and philosophical songs explored themes of virtue and ethics, and as I discovered, they were often clear paraphrases of Stoic writings. They were composed and circulated during the Renaissance revival of Stoicism in late 16th and 17th century France, a movement now known as neo-Stoicism. Emerging in the wake of the violent and chaotic wars of religion, neo-Stoics were interested in the therapeutic possibilities offered by the Stoic tradition. And they developed a repertoire of vocal music to teach the principles of the system, guiding singers and listeners to rehearse Stoic techniques of emotional regulation. These songs were not only delivering a serious philosophical message, they were also clever, occasionally playful, and surprisingly moving. In other words, this was music not only for the mind, but also for the ears and the heart. An example from 1582, titled L'eau va vite, was composed by Pascal de L'Estocard, setting poetry by Antoine de Chandieu. I'll read the French first because for the poets among us, it's so beautiful. L'eau va vite en s'écoulant, plus vite le trait volant, et plus vite encore passe le vent qui les noue et chasse. Mais de la jouée mondaine, la course est si très soudaine qu'elle passe encore devant l'eau et le trait et le vent. Water flows quickly, even faster the flying arrow, and faster still passes the wind which chases the clouds. But of worldly joy, its course is so sudden that it passes even before the water, the arrow, and the wind. Numerous Stoic writings, such as Seneca's On the Brevity of Life, evoke similar watery imagery to warn against placing our happiness in external comforts and securities, which are so quickly lost. Marcus Aurelius likewise reflected in his Meditations, we find ourselves in a river. Which of the things around us should we value when none of them can offer a firm foothold? L'Estocard's setting for L'eau va vite picks up on this quality of motion, central to the poetry and to the Stoic analogy. Listen for the snowballing rhythm that picks up speed with each example of quick passing. Also striking is the metrical shift at worldly joy that goes to a triple dun 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 dun, kind of like a dance, with earthly pleasure that is gone as quickly as it came. almost 400 years, the English rock band Pink Floyd created a similarly striking musical reflection on the same Stoic warning of the fleeting nature of time in the iconic song from their best-selling album, Dark Side of the Moon, released in 1973. The album outlines all the major forces and concerns that can drive people insane, such as human aging, death, fear, greed, and violence. Mental health held particular salience for the band, considering the abrupt breakdown of their founding frontman, Syd Barrett, only a few years earlier. According to Pink Floyd's Roger Waters, the album is about life with a heartbeat. And the band signals this by opening and closing the album with a slow, simulated heartbeat that sounds somehow both mechanical and profoundly human. Time uses numerous musical strategies to draw attention to the precarity of human life. The track opens with a meandering 2.5-minute instrumental introduction, which is kind of crazy for a radio hit, slowly building from a breathy synthesizer drone to the disorienting sound of numerous ticking clocks. A cacophony of alarms suddenly go off before we hear a mechanical bass click that sounds like a metronome or that mechanical heartbeat. The entrance of the electric guitar and increasingly regular musical phrases finally set up the arrival of the vocals in the first verse, ticking away the moments that make up a dull day, fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way. It's a very long track. It's like 8.5 minutes, so we're not going to play the whole thing here. But what I want to point out is that the unusual extended instrumental introduction creatively destabilizes a listener's expectation of musical time and demands greater attention to each passing moment, those moment-by-moment changing of sounds. You have no idea what to expect. And I think that especially for someone who's expecting a standard rock track, this is actually, you're thinking at any moment, wait, when are you going to actually get to the song? It is 2.5, the introduction is the length of a standard radio-friendly pop song. So we haven't even gotten to any of the thing we've expected. So that is, I think, one of the features of this really interesting example. And then the lyrics reinforce this initial musical warning that we must pay close attention to the present flow of time to make sure that we don't waste it, and that we are using it with purpose and meaning before we die. Quote, "The time is gone, the song is over," the lyrics finally conclude. Thought I'd something more to say. Now, the imaginative music examples that I've just shared model a core element of Stoic therapy by inviting a meditation on the fragility of time and human life. This immersive exercise is ultimately about letting go of fear and other destructive emotions that pull our attention to the future and the past, and learning to fully appreciate our time now. As Marcus Aurelius recommended, give yourself a gift, the present moment. Stoicism and its abundant artistic echoes have been misread as pessimistic because of this relentless focus on human mortality and fragility. All the skulls, we'll see many of these today. This negative reading misses Stoicism's profoundly optimistic and empowering message, which is that our mental freedom remains in our power, regardless of our external circumstances. Roger Waters highlighted exactly this point in his defense of the humanism of Dark Side of the Moon, explaining that, quote, despite the rather depressing ending, there is an allowance that all things are possible, that the potential is in our hands. Music from this perspective offers a way to learn about the therapeutic methods of the Stoics, and more importantly, it offers a multi-sensory mode of practicing it. Even for those who have not been directly interested in its philosophy, Stoicism has subtly shaped the course of intellectual and music history in the Western European tradition from ancient times to the present. We may very well already appreciate music through deep listening strategies guided by Stoic principles. By attending to these sonic practices, we can better understand music's relationship to our mental well-being and how a regular exposure to this expressive union of words and sounds nourishes a healthy emotional life. So as strange as it might sound at first, you just might want to learn how to enjoy music like a Stoic. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Melinda. That was amazing. Everyone, we have some time, so I'm going to... Actually, is this the roving mic for the questions, or am I the roving? Yeah. Do you have any questions for Melinda? It's early, yeah. Can everyone hear that, or can everyone hear the question? Maybe take this.
I said I loved your last line on how you said enjoy music like a Stoic, and so I'm curious would you consider modern auditory technologies like binaural beats or the bilateral EMDRs that the apps like Calm use to help influence our mental state, would that qualify as the kind of structure that Stoics valued for achieving internal harmony, or does music require a more human, artistic element to be philosophically relevant?
That is a great question, and I really like binaural beats, and I found them to be really helpful, so I've been thinking about this. Yep. And I think one of the things that I love this piece by Paul Skade on ancient Stoic views of music, and I think this is where we get into the possibilities of music without words as having real value within this tradition. And so what I would say is that the idea that music fundamentally has its own kind of rationality, its own order. And I think that the way that even EMDR and binaural beats works is based on that. In other words, there is a kind of, it's not chaos. Like none of us actually, there's a kind of structure and order within it that we respond to at a certain level. And I don't think it's always about this kind of foregrounding of the intellectual. And I think this is, the trickier point, because we often think of Stoicism as, about making kind of verbal arguments, more like language. But like language, if you think about this, they often did talk in at least the writings that we think. And again, this is where we get into like a lot of lost things, but in later authors, for example, Diogenes Laertius is one of our sources. His lives, he talks about Stoicism in sometimes ways that may or may not be correct to what happened before. But I think that the idea that there is a fundamental connection between sound and kind of what makes language work, the kind of meaning. So in other words, where sound can have meaning in a way that is not requiring it to be, I would say, intellectualized, if that makes sense. So I think that's partly how this might be working in a more kind of direct way.
Great, thank you. Fab question. All right, one more question. We've got a couple of minutes. In the back.
Yeah.
We need you on the mic just for the live stream, so give us a second. Hopefully we'll have time for one quick one as well. Maybe we'll have time for one more. We'll see how we go.
Thank you. Just off the cuff, is Stoic philosophy, do you know of, being taught in any music programs?
Oh, what a great question. Let me just say there's one university, Tufts, that is, so I'm teaching on music and Stoicism. I am not aware, I need to go there, sorry. I teach on music and Stoicism here at Tufts. I am not aware of any other, I don't know if anyone else, if anyone else out there, I have not yet seen any other university courses that would be bringing together Stoicism and music. The place that we would sometimes find it is in art history. So that's usually the only place. The Vanitas movement in the 17th century is well known to be influenced by Stoicism, still lifes, etc. But generally, music has not been connected to that. I will also just mention that Stoicism in general has taken longer to, I think, be taught in universities, and this is something Christiana knows much more about than, as she's in our philosophy department, than, say, Aristotle.
Thanks, Melinda.
Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe one last question.
Quick question. We've got 30 seconds for question and answer.
So, I mean, I like music, there's noise or free jazz, things that I would say that do not reflect Zeno's mention of order and reason. Is there any music that's not Stoic?
Oh, this is a really great question. I don't know that I can respond to this in 30 seconds. I love this question though, and I would love to chat more about this, anyone who wants this. What I will say initially though, even free jazz, even noise music, I would argue has its own fun. In the Stoic sense of how they think about rationality, I would say it still has that fundamental kind of rationality. Now, the way that the structure works in time, it defies your expectations. But I actually don't think that it's meaningless. I think it's still creating its own sense of meaning. That's why you generally want to listen to it. So that's a great question, though. So thank you.
I think we'll be hounding you at lunchtime and for more questions.
Let's talk more.
Big round of applause, everyone, for Melinda. Thanks, Melinda. Christiana, over to you.
All right, can everyone hear me all right? We're good? Okay. So I do not have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm just going to talk through this. So good morning, everyone. I'm Christiana Olfert. I teach here in the philosophy department at Tufts. I'm our resident ancient Greek and Roman philosophy specialist. And I'm going to start my contribution to this conference with a confession. I am a professional philosopher, but a total amateur at art of all kinds. So when I attempt to create an artwork, as I did for this conference, I'll talk about that more in a minute, I try to console myself with the advice that I should just try my best. Most of us have heard and have given this advice. Just try your best seems like the thing to say when a task might be too hard for us, when an outcome is not entirely in our control, or when we're dealing with uncertainty, unpredictability, and change. Nowadays, we might say that this advice helps us focus on process as opposed to product, on effort rather than result. The ancient Stoics, though, would put the point a bit differently. Instead of distinguishing an emphasis on means versus ends, or on the journey versus the destination, they distinguish two different kinds of ends or goals we can have, only one of which is, strictly speaking, a goal. Very roughly, in life and in art, we can have what we might call internal or external goals. Internal goals, true goals, are about our own psychological states and activities. We might aim to make good choices, to avoid false beliefs, for example. External goals, targets that are not really goals in the strict sense. Those external goals go beyond our psyches. We might, in this sense, aim to create a beautiful artwork, or perform a just action, or lead a successful life. For the Stoics, then, there is a significant difference between the goal of creating a beautiful artwork and the goal of trying your best to create a beautiful artwork. The advice to try your best, in the sense I've been discussing, tells us to set a particular kind of internal goal, a goal about directing our motives, our judgment, and choices in a certain way that does not depend on and can even come apart from the external goal of succeeding in what we are trying to do. But, and this is the question I want to reflect on today, is the advice to try your best good advice, either in art or in life? Especially for us amateurs, are internal goals like trying our best any more in our control, any more insulated from chance and change than external goals? And if not, what might this tell us about the benefit of pursuing internal goals? So, to start answering these questions, I want to connect our contemporary advice to try your best to some pieces of ancient Stoic doctrine. And as in Melinda's case, some of this will be familiar to some of you, it might be less familiar to others, so I'm just going to try to walk through some fundamentals so we're all on the same page. So what do the Stoics say we should do if we want to live well and happily? One particular Stoic, Cicero, answers this question with his famous analogy between aiming to live well and happily and an archer aiming to hit a target. We might initially be tempted to compare our goal of living well with the archer's goal of hitting the target. We will live well and happily, we will succeed at living well, we might say, when we get the good things we aim to have, just as the archer will have succeeded if they hit a bullseye on their target. But Cicero explains that this is a mistake. The goal and the standard by which we determine whether someone's a good archer is not hitting the target. It's aiming well at the target. So here's a passage from Cicero's De Finibus. He says, if a man's object were to aim a spear or an arrow straight at something, his doing everything in his power to aim it straight would correspond to our doctrine of the final good. On that kind of analogy, this man must do everything to aim straight. And yet his doing everything to attain his object would be his end, so to speak, analogous to what we are calling the final good in life, whereas his striking the target would be something to be selected, as it were, not to be desired. So here's what I think Cicero is saying, very roughly. Suppose we were trying to determine whether someone is a good and successful archer. Can we determine this by asking if the archer has hit her target? Well, probably not. Someone can hit a target accidentally without being skilled at archery at all, and we wouldn't call that person a good archer. And even an expert archer might fail to hit her target sometimes because actually hitting the target depends on many factors beyond one's control, even the control of an expert archer. Right? An expert archer can be expected to account for ordinary wind conditions and usual obstacles, but failure to hit her target because of a once-in-a-millennium earthquake or the nefarious plans of a saboteur or something, that doesn't impugn her skill as an archer. Failing to hit a target in these cases doesn't make someone a bad or unsuccessful archer, just as accidentally hitting a target doesn't make someone a good and expert archer. So, since hitting the target does not always correlate with success at archery, we should not think of that as the primary goal of archery. Instead, if anything, the ultimate end of archery is aiming well. That is, correctly doing everything in one's power to hit the target. That is what sets the necessary and sufficient conditions, we'd say in philosophy, for being a good archer. And that is therefore the standard by which we distinguish success and failure at archery. Insofar as the goal of an activity sets the standards for the activities going well or successfully, and is grounds for praise in doing the activity, we should say that the true primary end of archery is not hitting the target, but aiming well at the target. So what does this mean for our attempts to live well and happily? Well, the Stoics say that in life, as in archery, the ultimate end and standard for success is doing correctly everything in our power to get what we aim at. Put another way, the ultimate end of life is trying our best to get what is beneficial and avoid what is harmful in accordance with our natures. Like the archer who may or may not hit her target, trying our best may or may not lead to our actually getting what's beneficial and avoiding what's harmful, but it's the aiming or the trying that counts. And more specifically, aiming or trying counts when it is our best effort. That is, when it's done with skill, expertise, or virtue. Trying our best in the sense of aiming well, Cicero says, that is the true primary end of all our actions and activities, including the activity of living our lives. So let me now try to tie some of that general background to the topics of our conference, impermanence and art. First, Cicero's archery analogy plausibly applies, I think, to our activities of artistic creation and appreciation, as well as to our life as a whole. If we can talk at all about goals or ends of artistic activities, by which we judge if they're going well or badly, successfully or unsuccessfully, it seems clear that the Stoics would not identify artistic ends in terms of the creation of a beautiful work, for example, or the having of a specific aesthetic experience in contemplating a beautiful work. Instead, if artists and art appreciators are like archers, the goal of our artistic activities is something more like aiming well at creating and properly appreciating beautiful works, trying our best to make them and to understand them and experience them accordingly. But why should we think that artists and art appreciators really are like archers, and that we should understand the goals of artistic practices in analogous ways? Good question. Well, intuitively, creating beautiful works and having aesthetic experiences are not fully up to us. They depend on external resources and materials, leisure time for creation and appreciation, a certain kind of health status, and physical and perceptual abilities, the material and political infrastructure for art preservation and display, and so on. Right? These external resources and facts about the world come and go, as does our access to them. They're impermanent. And here's the key point. Intuitively, we wouldn't say that someone is a failed artist because the impermanence of external necessary conditions got in the way of her creating something beautiful or of appreciating a beautiful work. If she develops tendinitis and can't play her instrument for the time being, if her favorite local art museum is bombed or robbed, if she loses her job and can no longer afford the materials she needs to complete her work, these changes in her circumstances don't make her a failed artist, nor do they make her artistic activities poorly done. But if impermanent externals do not have any bearing on whether someone is a good and successful artist, or whether someone's artistic activities are well or poorly done, then these impermanent things must be separate from the true goals of or ends of her artistic activities. As in the case of archery and life in general, to look for the true goals of artistic activity, to find the standards for art done well or badly, we should instead look inward, toward the soul of the artist and her internal discernments, feelings, judgments, and choices. Now, if my students were here, and I don't see any actually here, but if they were, they might have some questions about what I've said so far. And one question might be, why are we talking about the standards of artistic practice at all? Isn't art something personal and subjective rather than something you can succeed or fail at? Isn't the whole point of the trying your best advice to avoid thinking in terms of success and failure? So I think I know one way the Stoics might respond to this question, or this set of questions. In the context of ancient Greek and Roman philosophy, to have a goal just is to subject yourself to standards of doing well or badly, success or failure. To the extent that you achieve a goal or get closer to achieving it, you do well. To the extent that you fail to achieve it, you do less well. Of course, this may be a matter of degree rather than of absolute categories. There might be better or worse rather than categorical success or failure. But to the extent that trying your best is indeed a goal that you set for yourself, you can achieve that goal to greater or lesser degrees. And in that respect, there are some evaluative standards to which your activities are subject, even your artistic activities. Moreover, and here's I think where my students in Stoicism might get even more uncomfortable, from within the Stoic perspective, trying your best as a goal is not a trivial or easy goal to achieve. Giving it your best involves more than putting in some kind of effort when you feel like it. right? Your best effort might involve trying to cultivate certain skills, even virtues that advance and perfect your goal-directed activities. You might even need courage, moderation, justice, and wisdom in order to give the best version of your efforts, even in artistic activities. In this respect, the Stoic advice to try your best does not merely involve some standards or others for activities. It might involve very high standards, even the standards of virtue, in order to really count as your best. But here's an aspect of trying your best in Stoicism that might reassure us, my students, that the Stoic approach to art is not totally unrelatable or overly demanding. If I'm right that the true goal of artistic activities for the Stoics is to try our best, or to create or appreciate beautiful art, this is one and the same goal for amateur and expert or professional artists alike. It's not the case for the Stoics that trying your best is like a lower level goal for us poor amateurs who can't do any better, while creating beautiful art is the loftier, more ambitious goal for accomplished, skilled artists and connoisseurs. Again, if I'm right, all Stoic artists, amateur and skilled alike, have the same goal of trying their best. And amateur and professional art is continuous in this respect. We might think this is maybe a kind of vindication from a Stoic perspective of amateur art. Fundamentally, the Stoic might say, amateur and skilled artists are doing the same thing, namely trying their best to create and appreciate beautiful works. Focusing on these internal goals of effort and discernment might then go some way toward making artistic practice more accessible and relatable than you might have initially thought, either from a Stoic perspective or otherwise. Now, to be honest, this makes me feel a little bit better about my own artistic contribution to this conference. So as I mentioned at the outset, I am an amateur at all kinds of art, but the medium I chose for this weekend is especially new to me. For this weekend, I created an aquascape. Are there any fish keepers, aquascapers in the room? Okay, so, fair enough. So, for those who may not know, and maybe that's some of us here, people have been keeping fish in ponds and dishes for a long time, and water features, of course, feature prominently in landscaping. But aquascaping is sort of, as its own art form, it seems to be mostly a 20th century invention, with a great increase in popularity in the 1990s, following the work of Japanese photographer and aquascaper Takashi Amano. If any of you have had a chance to take a look at the tiny aquascape in the lobby, the entryway of the building, you might have noticed that there's an Amano shrimp in there named after this famous aquascaper. So as you can probably infer, aquascaping is roughly the aquatic equivalent of landscaping. It's water gardening, the art of arranging various materials, including plants, live or artificial, rocks, driftwood, substrate, and other decorations in aquariums. Usually, aquascapes also feature fish or some other kind of aquatic fauna to add the impression of a closed, complete ecosystem in the work. Nowadays, there are many accepted distinctive styles of aquascaping, none of which correspond to really what I've done out there, but there's a Dutch style, there's iwagumi, nature style, jungle style, and more. There are also many aquascaping galleries, awards, competitions, from the massive, there's the International Aquatic Plants Layout Contest, the IAPLC, which, for the record, they have all top entries, the photographs of the entries available online, so if you ever want to go see some truly amazing aquascapes, IAPLC, just Google it, and you'll find some work there. So that's a really famous competition. There's the Art Aquarium Gallery in Tokyo. There's aquashella competitions at different hobbyist shows around the US, and small display tanks at local fish stores. A year ago, this was a world I was completely unaware of. And then my son asked me for his first fish. So, but to make a long story short there, I wanted to create an aquascape for this conference in part because it was something I had never done before. There were a ton of challenges involved in creating a scape that would be small, stable, and portable enough to survive a half-hour highway trip from my home, where it's been growing out since early January, to my office here at Tufts, and then from my office up on the hill down here to the conference venue. And then there are our local water parameters here. I'm not sure who else, other than fish keepers, knows in detail the water chemistry in their local town. But my local water parameters up in Wakefield, Massachusetts, I discovered by experience, greatly reduce the plant selection that was available to me, especially given my budgetary constraints with the kind of lighting that I was able to use. I did, however, try my best to create a beautiful aquascape. And in the process, I learned so much about what it takes to put forward your best effort in a project like this. It was truly humbling to discover how much I hadn't considered and the myriad of choices I had to make that would ideally, in the best case, if I were really trying my best, by succeeding at that, would be informed by the study of various subfields of biology and chemistry, ideas about composition and water movement, scale, size and proportion, light and shadow, color and texture, and a whole lot more. I love a good challenge, and I'm an academic by preference and training, so none of this was discouraging to me. For me, that was all part of the fun. But honestly, the result is a bit disappointing to me. The final aquascape did not, in fact, come out the way I had hoped or envisioned. So this is where the advice to try my best seems most relevant to my own projects, namely when the result or the outcome threatens to fall short. When I look back and reflect on the work I did, what I learned, what skills I began to develop, it turns out that I came a long way toward the goal of trying my best to create a beautiful aquascape. I did not fully succeed in this goal, not least because I did not, obviously in one go, fully develop all the skills of aquascaping and all the virtues required for aquascaping on my first try. But if I share this goal of trying my best with all aquascapers, even the most skilled and professional, and yes, there are professional aquascapers, then my project is not that different from the work I most admire. I became part of an artistic community, a community of people all trying to do the same thing within our different circumstances and skill sets and aesthetic preferences and financial limitations and so on. And this practice we share is open to anyone with the same goal, even to us amateurs. And from this perspective, maybe a disappointing result doesn't seem all that significant. After all, if my goal is to try my best to create a beautiful aquascape, I'm not done. I can keep trying. So by way of conclusion, I want to leave us with one more question, and a suggestion about how to answer it. So as I mentioned earlier, the advice to try your best seems especially apt and helpful in changing impermanent circumstances. Faced with impermanence and instability in the outer world, it seems to make sense to turn inward, toward inner goals that are more in our control and away from external goals whose achievement is not entirely up to us. The trouble with this strategy, though, is that our inner world may be no less insulated from impermanence and instability than the outer one. From illnesses to sudden accidents and medical events, from trauma to death, there might well be many, many ways in which our ability to think clearly, judge correctly, and cultivate skills and virtues can be compromised and can disappear altogether. It's not clear that we should take our dispositions or our ability to assent, choose, or judge for granted any more than we should take our ability to walk or paint or vote or talk with a friend for granted. From this perspective, retreating inward toward inner goals as a response to impermanence in the external world might seem like a mistaken strategy, one that preserves a desperate and ultimately doomed desire for permanence and stability where none is really to be found. From this perspective, then, when we ask the main question of my talk this morning, is the advice to try your best good advice? We might wonder, right, if the benefit of this advice is supposed to be the reorientation of our goals toward ones that are more stable and are more in our control. But then if our inner life, our inner trying, is ultimately no more stable and in our control than the outer world, how helpful is it to focus on trying your best? Here's one way the Stoics might respond to these questions. Surely they would say impermanence in itself is not a bad thing. It's not bad. So instead of trying to retreat from or escape from impermanence towards something more permanent, whether you locate that in your own mind or somewhere else, why not pursue projects that might reduce your discomfort with impermanence itself, and with the idea that normative standards might still apply even to impermanent things beyond our control? For example, why not engage in artistic practices and projects that are emphatically impermanent? Trying your best to achieve something that you know won't last might be pretty good practice for life. And in this respect, aquascaping might be an especially good example of artistic Stoic practice. As art that often has living things as its key materials, aquascapes are not designed to capture or pin down any specific meaning or concept. In fact, expert aquascapers sometimes say that their scapes peak at about 4 to 6 months after planting, and tanks are often torn down and redesigned within about a year. Permanence is definitely not the goal of this artistic practice. Instead, the growth, change, and movement of the plants, animals, and the water itself are essential to the beauty of the work. Just as Heraclitus could not step in the same river twice, although that's not quite what he actually said, thank you, Plato, you never quite see the same aquascape twice. And right, as Seneca says on the Brevity of Life, time is constantly on the move, like a rushing river. Aquascapes make great objects of reflection or meditation on impermanence and the passage of time. Marcus Aurelius also likes moving water as a metaphor for the movement of time. In Meditations 4, he comments that time is like a river made up of the events which happen and a violent stream. For as soon as a thing has been seen, it is carried away, and another comes in its place, and this will be carried away too. Given the strong Stoic association between the flow of time and the flow of water, engagement with the aquatic arts might be something worth adding to your Stoic practice, especially as you work to confront and accept the impermanence of everything that time touches, not just the external world. Even my own scape, which I've titled A Different River, and thank you, Heraclitus, and it is in the lobby here out front, that's probably going to come down later tonight or tomorrow to make way for something new. Thank you.
Amazing. I'm actually not sure if this is working. There it is. Christiana, thank you so much. I'm going to be really curious to hear from all of your ideas about engaging with impermanent creative arts. We've got a question in the front, and we've got about 5 minutes all up for questions, so over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Olfert. I'm curious if you try your best and external factors interfere, your thoughts on whether just accepting one's fate versus amor fati, or loving one's fate, is influenced by the Stoics' view of providence, meaning there's actual meaning to the universe rather than just atoms and void.
Yes, so absolutely those aspects of Stoicism are going to be deeply connected. And I think, right, part of the advice to try your best is, in that sense, very broad and vague. And when we're taking that advice from a Stoic perspective, it may be, and certainly is, part of the advice to try your best, to accept that some things you're just not going to achieve. And that might in fact be for the best, right? That level of acceptance, that might be one of the things you're trying to achieve. And I know that when you're trying your best, and I know that for myself, that's often one of the harder ones, because I like a challenge and I like to work really hard at things, and even when things seem really difficult, I'm going to keep trying. So I think even, right, given that we're sort of trying our best, and that's sort of an open-ended piece of advice, it's definitely within the Stoic perspective and fully consistent with it that part of what we're trying to do is properly understand what nature has in store for us and see that as good. And that might be not finishing, not accomplishing what you wanted to. Maybe things get cut off right at the beginning. The first, I order a tank and it gets smashed, and there's actually, it's back ordered, so I never even really start. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. The last piece right at the end really resonates, where the idea of kind of leaning into the impermanence. It reminds me, I saw a video of these Tibetan monks that make these really intricate mandalas, and they're beautiful, and they allow after they've completed it, they allow either the ocean or they'll just crush them or put them back into the sand to understand the idea of impermanence.
Yeah.
So I really love that idea. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for making that connection. There are actually so many art forms that are either deliberately designed to be impermanent or by a particular artist are taken to be impermanent. And I think that music might be another great example of the passage of time and the impermanence of any particular sound or note. I mean, even that can be a reflection on and a way of leaning into the fact that nothing is going to stay, ultimately. And maybe that's something that we need to learn to accept rather than try to retreat from. Yeah.
Thanks, Christiana. 2 more questions. One there.
Thank you. I had a question about trying your best, and you talk about it being difficult and that it's maybe not a satisfying answer to get when we ask for help. So I'm wondering if trying your best implies knowing and respecting your limits or pushing them, and if that's supposed to enact meaningful change, or if we should be respectful of our mental and physical limits when trying our best.
Good. So that is a really good question. And I think I'm going to give that really unsatisfying professorial answer, which is it depends. but I think that's really true. And it's going to be really important to the Stoics that there are a great variety of circumstances in which this advice applies. And sometimes you hit a certain kind of limit where it would just be irrational to keep pushing. It's going to be self-defeating, or there is just no way forward there. And then you should definitely not keep going in that direction. There are going to be other times where the limits are things that we encounter, we perceive, and we can, with a little bit more practice or effort or learning, overcome. And we can make sort of a leap in learning by pushing past a limit. How we discern which situation we're in is going to be a very tricky life lesson. Should I push myself harder, or should I take a break? I think most of us have asked ourselves that kind of question, and I'm not sure that I have a good answer for how you figure that out. But it's certainly going to involve, to some degree, introspection and how you're doing and the nature of the obstacle you're facing. But I think those particulars, I'm not sure that there is a good or a better or clearer formula for how to deal with that kind of confusing and difficult situation.
Thanks, Christiana. We're actually at time, but let's quickly ask the question, start the answer, and might continue later. So over to you really quickly.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I really appreciated the archer analogy and your aquascape story. I think you got to this a little bit with the aquascape story, but if you could elaborate a little bit on this idea that looking back, you could always have done better.
Yeah.
And how to reconcile that, or tried better.
Yes. So I think that especially when you're very new at a particular practice, whether that's an artistic one or otherwise, even if it's something you really admire and you've spent some time thinking about, until you're doing it, until you're actually trying to achieve something on your own, at least for me, I think my imagination maybe isn't good enough to anticipate all of the choices and standards and the challenges that I might face from the outset. So for me, I think the advice to try your best does invite reflection on past tryings and evaluating those past tryings to see how you could do better in the future. Because trying is an ongoing activity, I'm not done aiming at this. I can learn from the past limitations and failures of imagination and build on that in terms of developing skills, in terms of developing a little bit more patience in my case, a little bit more, there are just so many logistical challenges, even with bringing the tank over here. It's not even that big, it's like this big. It took me and my 8-year-old like multiple hours to get it over here, and I think I could do better at that next time. Or maybe just not transport a glass box full of water. Like maybe that was my first mistake, to think that I should bring an aquascape right miles away from where I set it up. So I think that, again, the advice to try your best does invite building on past tryings. And I think hopefully that doesn't invite mere self-criticism, but a kind of optimistic looking forward. I'm sorry, that was probably a longer response than you wanted, but thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Great questions, everyone.
Thanks.
Round of applause. Okay, Ranjini George, the microphone is yours now. Just give us a couple of seconds while Ranjini sets up her slides. I noticed someone jumping up in the back, so do you want to take this a few seconds while Ranjini gets ready to stretch, stand up? Do you need some assistance there?
We all have these. Yeah. Right. There are limitations. A little bit of humility is required here. Yes. I'm not going to meet on the pro scene. There's always the masters competitions, you know. I know. It's been wonderful. I mean, I know I've heard some of this material before. There's one question I have for you is about ancient Greek music. Yes. It is so weird. I don't like it, and I don't like it. It's like, what were they when you...
Okay, everyone, resume positions.
Sorry.
We're ready to go. Thanks, Ranjini.
Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine. It's wonderful to go after the music and the Stoic Arts that I'm also touching on. So welcome to this session. We are going to be talking about a smile to the cloud in your tea. We're going to be talking about a Zen monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, and the Buddhist idea of impermanence, and also, of course, Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor. So, since we're talking about mindfulness and Buddhism, and in Stoicism you have Stoic mindfulness, let's take a moment to breathe. So breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Calm, smile. Breathing in, I dwell in the present moment. Breathing out, I know it is a wonderful moment. Present moment, wonderful moment. Thank you. So this session is dedicated to Stoic Daniel Lampert. I met Dan. I met Dan at the conference in the Stoicon conference in Athens. There were a number of people there, and we didn't really have a chance to talk. But coincidentally, we were on the same flight from Athens to Toronto, and Dan was sitting in the row behind me. So it was this wonderful moment of interconnection and being on this long flight together. And we kept in touch after that. The last time I met Dan in person was at the wonderful Stoic Summit in Florida. I'm so grateful to you, Phil and Brittany, for organizing that in-person event. But Dan visited a number of my classes, and it felt really strange this semester not to have him come in as a guest speaker. He was always so generous with his time. A few days after I was invited to speak at this conference, I saw this Facebook message that Dan had passed, and it was completely surprising because we had just been on touch in email. He had some questions about Buddhism and Stoicism, and so when I saw the post, I sent him an email and said, Dan, I think your Facebook has been hacked. And that's how unpredictable it was, and I was face to face with impermanence. So on the flight, Dan, being Dan, he said, Ranjini, let's do some walking meditation. And so here we are, and it's just a few minutes. So we're going to look at different aspects of impermanence and creativity through Thich Nhat Hanh, looking at the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh and Marcus Aurelius. We look at the mind, the training of the mind. In Buddhism, we call the mind the wish-fulfilling jewel. If you visit a Buddhist Asian gallery, you'll see that many of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas hold this beautiful jewel. And the jewel is the wish-fulfilling jewel of your own mind. The possibility of Buddha nature. Buddha is not the same qualities that Buddha has exists in us. And so the whole process in Buddhism is Lojong, training of one's mind. We look at present moment awareness as being integral to impermanence. This is it, as Thich Nhat Hanh says. And the idea, which is both in Stoicism and in Buddhism, of the precious human life. Each day is a life. We look at true love relationships. I will touch on the Stoic Archer, but Christina has done a fabulous job by exploring that whole aspect. And then creativity, the universe is here. Every time we're being creative, and we do something creative, as Zigar Kongtrul Rinpoche says, the universe is here. And then a cloud never dies. Smile to the cloud in your tea, the cloud never dies. The cloud becomes water, it rains, it becomes the water in your tea. So there's this continuous movement of change of the elements. And then living with the 5 remembrances. So I want to begin this by just reading the 5 remembrances, which is something that in Buddhism we remind ourselves of every day, and we say every day, I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated by them, from them. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground upon which I stand. So this is, my husband Lee and I went to Trier last year, and they had this Marcus Aurelius exhibition. It was wonderful. And so Marcus, of course, in the Meditations, and I've drawn a lot of the verses from just book 2 of the Meditations, so you can imagine how many there are if you go through all 12 books, the importance of training one's mind. The Meditations, of course, as we know, was written by him for himself. He says, "Be like a headland of rock against which the waves continually break. It stands fast, nevertheless, and around it the crashing waters come to rest. The mind, unconquered by violent passions, is the citadel, for a man has no fortress more impregnable to which to find refuge and remain safe forever." So on the Stoic path, we constantly face choices, and the only harm that we do as a Stoic is when we assent to false and injurious beliefs, when we make these wrong choices. You remember the choice of Hercules, choosing virtue or choosing vice. And in the Meditations, he says, with our practice, our command center, our mind, he says, put an end to its enslavement. Its enslavement by unhealthy passions, wrong choices, anger, and so forth. Thich Nhat Hanh in Buddhism, a natural correlation, and that's what drew me to Stoicism. Thich Nhat Hanh says, peace in ourselves, peace in the world. So peace really begins in finding that peace within yourself. So Buddhism focuses on Lojong, just like Stoicism, which is completely mind training, so that your mind is this jewel. Your mind, where each step is peace. Happiness really begins from within oneself, despite impermanence, despite illness, death, loss, everything. So Thich Nhat Hanh says, in the stormy ocean of life, be your own refuge. He was born in Hue, in Vietnam. He was exiled from Vietnam for close to 44 years because of his peace activism. He met with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who he called a bodhisattva. And Martin Luther King Jr. Nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. And if you visit any of the retreat centers in Magnolia, you'll see a statue of both of them. And Thai, which means teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, committed himself to carrying on Dr. King's vision of beloved community. I don't know if any of you followed the Walk for Peace, where the 19 monks, walked from Fort Worth, Texas, to Washington, D.C., and now they're actually doing the walk in Sri Lanka in heat, and here it was in winter and snow. But the idea of just peace, whatever our world is today, however messed up and however we feel inside, that peace is this choice, and peace is accessible. And so Venerable Bhikkhu Panakara, who led the Walk for Peace, says, tell yourself every morning, today will be my peaceful day, which doesn't mean that everything's going to be wonderful, but it's going to be a peaceful day. So integral to the idea of impermanence is the present moment awareness. All the calligraphy I'm using is the calligraphy of Thich Nhat Hanh. He was a poet, he wrote novels, he wrote nonfiction, prolific, very prolific, over 100 books. And Thich Nhat Hanh says the only country is the country of the present moment. The past is dead, the future is not yet born. And Marcus Aurelius, many, many verses on the present moment awareness. Each of us lives only in the present, this fleeting moment of time, and the rest of one's life has either already been lived or lies in an unknowable future. So in Buddhism, one of the things is that fearlessness, courage, is really accepting the inevitability of the present moment. Whatever it is, instead of being dragged down by the sorrows and the regrets, or even the happiness of the past that is over, and then our worries and our anxieties and our hopes for the future. So this is it. That's all we have. This is it. So in both philosophies, the Buddha says, don't think about your death just every day. think about it every moment. And a lot of people talk about Marcus talking about death again and again and again, and they say, he's morbid. He's not, because what it this reference to death really brings this absolute consciousness of what Seneca says, each day is a life. Precious, precious human life, like this moment, is a wonder that we are alive. So the connection with precious human life in both philosophies is with the concept of interbeing, that we are all interconnected, we're all one body. So Marcus in book 2, he says, begin each day. How can I, even with difficult people, problematic people, people who betray you, whatever, nor can I be angry with someone who's related to me or hate him, because we are born to work together, like feet or hands or eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. To work against each other is therefore unnatural. So in your workplace, wherever it is, within family, extended family, whatever the difficulties, there's this reminder of interconnection, that you are interconnected. And Thich Nhat Hanh, a wonderful book, Present Moment, Wonderful Moment, which is his 4-line gathas. And this is a gatha I say every morning. Waking up this morning, I smile, 24 brand new hours are before me. I vow to live it in mindfulness and to look at all beings without exception, with compassion. So it's just this reminder of our core values. And then during the day, we learn to take breath breaks, just for a few seconds. Epictetus, of course, talks on his discourse on attention. He advises a daily mindfulness. His student says, is there a time out from it? He says, what are you going to do during that time out? So prosoke, attention, caution, beware, is still used in Greek. I don't speak Greek, but... and at the end of the day, we ask ourselves, drawing from the golden verses of Pythagoras, you can do some Stoic journaling like Seneca. What did I do well, omit to do, could do better? So you look, if the character, your character, is the most precious thing you have, then every single day there's this quick reflection on what you did. And you don't look at it in a way to make you feel bad about yourself, but with a sense of maitri, with loving kindness. What could I have done better? What did I do well? What did I accomplish? So breathe during the day. You are alive. Breathe. So time equals life. So this idea of just noticing where you spend your time, where you give your mind, that you point out, Sharon, in your wonderful book, the idea we're conscious of giving away our body, but are we conscious of giving away our mind, A limit has been set on your time, and the opportunity won't come again, meditations. Stop your purposeless wandering. So, finding what's important for you, whether, it's Stoicism, how you want to live, whatever it is, and trying to live and use that time. In the Buddhist tradition, in the evening, we say, let me respectfully remind you, life and death are of supreme importance. Time passes quickly and opportunity is lost. Let us awaken, take heed, do not squander your life. So true love in relationships. I'm not exploring this in depth, but I just wanted to touch on an element. And if you are interested in, there's a very slim book by Thich Nhat Hanh, which is called True Love. But he talks about 4 gathas, and I'll talk about the first 2, which is, Dear one, I am here for you. And the second one, Dear one, I know you are here, and it makes me very happy. So I would drive my daughter to school before I went to the university in Dubai. And, as I was driving her, I would be thinking about what all I had to do. And then I would bring myself back. You don't say it aloud, but in your mind, just coming into presence, into my own presence, and her beautiful presence. I mean, she's moved on. She's 24, I think, 24, yeah. And she's, got her own place. But at that moment in high school, she was there sitting next to me. And this wonderful moment of just, in my mind, being present, and I know you are there, and it makes me very happy. So extending this, even in work relationships, just being present to people, bringing that sense of presence to yourself and to others. So breathing in, I know that the flower is there. Breathing out, I smile at the flower. So Thich Nhat Hanh says that without understanding, there's no love. So we try to understand others, and we try to love in a way that the person feels free. We try to practice deep looking, deep listening. If you're interested in bringing conflict resolution, and in intimate relationships, working with that, and work relationships, on the Plum Village website, there's a wonderful practice which is called Beginning Anew with 4 steps. So in relationships, tell yourself time projection, impermanence. 25 years, 50, depending on how old you are, 50 years, 60 years, you will be dead, and the person you love will be dead. So there is this sense of just, that helps me. You're caught up in something really small. Your mind is in this tin drum. You open your fist and you will see the sky. There's a sense that you're not going to always be together. You're not going to always have this moment. So that time projection. And the Stoic archer, fortunately, I'm watching time. Christina has done it so beautifully. But how do we, as Gandhi says, do 100% engagement and 0% outcome? Because for all the reasons, Christina, that you pointed out, we have no control. We work hard, and as a writer, I know that. You work really hard. The Great Gatsby was a complete failure. We visited the Emily Dickinson's house. She published 7 of her almost 1,800 poems. So it cannot be the outcome, because we will get disheartened. But as Marcus Aurelius says, just devote yourself to your work. Be present to your work. Using whatever talent and ability you have, and whatever role you find yourself in life, and do it, and perform that action as if it were your last, because it could be. Perform it as if it were last. And then he says, and this is absolutely wonderful, I love it, he says, you will see how few are the things that a person needs to master if he is to live a tranquil and God-fearing life. That happiness is within our reach. It's really possible. So our sense of praise and blame and failure and success that give us unhappiness and happiness is illusory, really. So just do the work at hand. Form is the wave, Thich Nhat Hanh says, and emptiness is the water. So one wave is bigger than the other. It doesn't look at that wave and say, you're better than me, or I'm less than you. Our inferiority complex, superiority is all an illusion. We are all water. So Stoic journaling, practice some of that, as you live your day, and look at that. In addition to Stoic journaling, as a creative writer, I also just write down thoughts, cloud thoughts, as Julia Cameron says. And I tell myself as a writer, let writing be about writing. If something happens with it, well and good. If not, well and good. So how do we live with the 5 remembrances? Just this idea that it's all natural. Elements come in together and then they go. In Buddhism, on your birthday, you tell yourself, illness is my companion, death is my friend. So instead of resisting it and being surprised by it, just sort of understanding that we learn to be comfortable with groundlessness, with uncertainty. And life, Marcus Aurelius says, is a war and a sojourn in a strange land. What thing can escort us safely on our way? One thing only, philosophy. And this consists in keeping the guardian spirit within us safe. If you're interested, you can listen to Donald Robertson, has a guided meditation, contemplation, view from above. You'll find it online. So impermanence is good news. If there was no impermanence, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, the acorn would not become an oak tree. The child would never grow up. We wouldn't have the seasons we have. It's just, And however hard life is, I was telling my dear friends in the Stoic community just a few days ago, my cousin's daughter is also dying, and she's 32. And I felt at first unable to even do this presentation, but had to just, remind myself of the teachings, that it is still the good news of impermanence, that happiness, as Hanh says, happiness and suffering inter-are. One cannot exist without another. So we just sort of live in this container where we are absolutely happy to be here, to meet our dear friends, to discuss philosophy, and we feel incredibly blessed and fortunate. And at the same time, we can also hold sadness, and because happiness and suffering inter-are, one cannot exist without the other. And Thich Nhat Hanh says that the conditions for happiness always exist. So if you can walk, there are many people who can't walk, so that condition. So focusing on the conditions for happiness. So that's it. I'm done. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Ranjini. Thanks, Phil. We have about...
2 minutes.
2 minutes? 2 minutes for questions. Thanks, Phil. Any questions for Ranjini?
Is there anybody on this side, since I happen to be here? Look, here we go. Look how well this works.
I think... Oh, you've got one. Okay.
So I had some thoughts about the whole ill health issue, because to a certain extent you can think of health as our trying to, live a good life, exist in a good way. So in a sense, when the teachings go, we should accept ill health and not pay attention to it. It's also health is a result to some extent of our lifestyle, i.e. our actions. So how do you reconcile that where we should strive to have good health, right? We should think of our lifestyle, think of our actions, how they affect our health, and at the same time, yes, I understand that we shouldn't let ill health deter us from our lives, but there's kind of this dichotomy there that it's difficult to reconcile, I think.
Mm-hmm. So in Stoicism, the only true good in the philosophy of Stoicism is virtue, but the indifference, what they call the preferred indifference, that it's easier to live with, is things like health and a good reputation and money. And so the Stoic view is that it's not essential for your well-being, Now, if past choices have brought on that health, and there's nothing you can do about those choices, there's a sense we let it go. And in some cases, it's health that is out of our control, like my cousin's daughter. She was just born and had, when she was born, she had to have a liver transplant. So there's some things that you have no control over, and then there's some things that we regret, and all of us have regrets. And so then this idea that the past is dead, the regrets, the sorrows, we let it go. And one of the Stoic virtues is courage. So there is that courage and the fearlessness in just accepting the moment for what it is. But if we keep regretting, Thich Nhat Hanh uses that image of, we go through something and that's the first wound. But if something happened to us in our childhood, something we did, and we keep sending arrows back to that same place, that wound becomes larger and larger. So we lose the happiness of just being alive in that present moment.
Thanks, Ranjini.
Hopefully that helps.
Phil?
Great. I'll take it. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Ranjini George. All right. This is our break. You've got roughly 15 minutes. That means back in the hour, your butt is going to be back in the seat. But between now and then, you're going to walk out, you're going to meet people, you're going to say, are there any donuts left? And all of that stuff, but we'll be back in here in 15 minutes. We've got to do a stage set. Go meet somebody new while you're out there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you guys too. Absolutely. I think he's not happy. Okay. He's very skittish. So he's not always fuzzy hot things, but putting all over the tank. Yes. Thank you. YouTubers, so many YouTubers. Yep. It's oh, thank you so much. Loving it. I think so. I had like all of the pages, so anyway, I hope it's not too many. I'm just letting it. Who knows? I'll go. Thank you. This will help my old eyes and my ADHD. I know. I know. Seriously. Printed copy. All right, I'm gonna go get it. Hey, Mark. Do I just go straight in? I just need to get this up. All right, extended screen. Yeah, actually that'll. Thank you. I do.
Can we test one of those?
Yes.
Stand by.
Do we have a light that she could use to read some printed things?
Like a music stand light?
You know what? It's fun.
We have that. How's that sound?
Off. Okay. Okay. Also, just roll it up. Me again. Here's my keynote.
Are you speaking as well?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lower this for you.
Right. Let me find a video. Okay. Do I have anything yet?
Hear it here.
It's coming from this. Yeah.
Yep. So let me just pause that real quick. Oh boy. Oh no. selected is this downloaded onto your computer? The presentation?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
Hey Murray, any reason why this is, can't get the audio, I mean I can get the video to play?
Hit play.
Yeah, I did.
And then hit spacebar.
Yeah, it doesn't, like when I selected our audio source, it didn't like it.
Yeah. Let's go, I mean, do we have that downloaded, Murray, as a video?
I don't know, but you
Okay, it should be. Okay, let me see. This one.
It's there. Okay.
Yeah,
So it's in your project files.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Sometimes this happens. Make sure all your stuff is saved. Could you do a restart?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right, that's okay.
This happens, unfortunately, with this lecture. Trust me, it's a point of contention.
Saved. Good to know. I'm so glad you're here for tech support. I'm gonna just unplug it. Should I? You want me to keep it plugged in when I restart? Okay.
What do you need the light for exactly?
Just to read a piece of paper. So, yeah, that works. Yeah, that works. Yeah. Come on, computer. It's not starting.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, it's really not liking that cord.
It really doesn't like us this morning, huh? Try unplugging. This.
Okay.
Small moment of panic, right?
I know. Like, huh?
All right. We'll get there.
Okay. Of course, I never restart my computer, which is probably terrible. Oh, thank you. Oh, it really did print all the pages. Jeez.
Alright, we can turn off the lights. Or do we have to wait for everybody to get in?
Well, can we leave it off because I've got to do, okay. Then let's see, this is Keynote. I was in Keynote. Here. Okay.
So now we'll go up to these two little
Yeah.
guys. We'll go to display.
Yep.
Sorry, click the word display.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is on Crestron. Why isn't it? Oh, because you're not presenting.
Yeah.
Got it. So if we hit present, excellent. So
Okay, except
that
that's
worked.
presenting here rather than here. Should I? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do
So I
you-
just need to move this over here. And then present from there, which I can never do.
Yeah, you just have to scroll over to the play button.
Over here?
Up on the top, kind of.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
There you are.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
Yes.
And it's 11:59, so we're good. So Murray, you can get your lighting how you need it, I guess.
Well, I can do dimmer lighting when they come back in, and then we can go to blackout once everybody's safely seated.
Okay.
But the noise is coming from you.
Yes, yeah. Great.
As far as microphones, just this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You don't need a microphone, do you? Okay.
I'll introduce you. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. So you want us to be...
Oh, okay. That's fine. I can be in the dark. I don't mind.
Sure.
I think so. Maybe the
Are Stoics on time? Do they do that? Is that a thing? Like, do they have watches and clocks and all that? Because you guys, what's that? Yeah, right. I mean, especially in an age of impermanence, right? All right, how did we do this morning? I thought that was pretty strong myself. I loved those speakers. What do you think? I was like, I get to be surprised about Stoicism. How awesome is this? Wonderful. All right. I'm going to hand this over to Brittany Polat, and she's going to get us started with the next session. Ladies and gentlemen, every time, it's in her contract, by the way, she's got a rider. Every time I say her name, you applaud. Ladies and gentlemen, Brittany Polat.
Thank you, Phil, and welcome back, everyone. The morning session was very inspiring, and we have more in store, starting with our next presenters. I'm very pleased to introduce Megan and Murray McMillan, who are multidisciplinary artists who have collaborated since 2002, working across sculpture, installation, video, performance, and photography. Their work has been exhibited internationally in Italy, Denmark, and at the State Museum of Contemporary Art in Greece. Megan McMillan is a professor of the practice here at Tufts, and Murray McMillan is a professor at Roger Williams University. Their practice centers on collaboration, impermanence, and art as a way of thinking through lived experience. In other words, they are perfect for today's event. So please join with me in welcoming Megan and Murray McMillan.
Thank you so much. This is really great. We are so excited to be here. We've been looking forward to this for a while. And we're going to launch in. We're doing something a little different. And usually we both stand up and talk in these sorts of things and go back and forth. And this time around, we're going to try something new. So I hope you're going to bear with us. And we are going to have an interactive video performance that goes along with our lecture. So without further ado, I am far from my text, but I'm going to just angle here. Okay, so we make interdisciplinary work that moves between video, installation, photography, and performance. And I'm not used to reading in the dark. So I am going to move over just a little bit. Can you all still hear me? Okay. I may need to get my microphone over. Okay. So I'm going to do just a bit of adjustment. All right. We make interdisciplinary work that moves between video, installation, photography, and performance. And we build large fabricated sets, often on site, and use them as stages for choreographed and unchoreographed performers. The work usually begins with research, but it doesn't stay there. It has to be built, installed, tested, eventually filmed or performed into being. The sets and the performers, the camera, the crew, the location, the weather, the failures, the accidents, and the brief moments where everything coheres are all part of the piece. We have come to understand that the work is not separate from the process. In many ways, the process is the work. Murray and I have been working together since 2002, and over that time, we have made projects that merge sculpture, performance, video, and photography. And what has stayed constant is this way of working. We set conditions, and we watch what happens when those conditions are tested by real bodies and real sites and real time. And we often spend months or years preparing for a shoot that may last only a few minutes. And we work towards those rare moments when something suddenly comes together and everyone feels it and it falls apart again. And over time, we have come to understand that impermanence is not a theme of our work, it is a working condition. Replacement is a working condition, failure is a working condition, a set gets dismantled, a structure gets rebuilt in another form, a performance disappears. A video remains, but not as a complete record of what happened. Meaning survives differently than matter does, it shifts, it gets redistributed, it's broken apart and re-entered. That way of thinking has shaped this talk. The title of the talk, While We Live Shine, is the title of the work that I'm talking about right now. And it comes from the Zeclio's epitaph, and it is the oldest complete song we know. Inscribed on a stone more than 2,000 years ago, it says, "While you live, shine, life is short, time takes its toll." pretty much the theme of what we're talking about today. And I keep returning to that line because it is both an instruction and a problem. What does it mean to shine if nothing lasts? What does it mean to make art if the object is unstable, if the performance vanishes, and if the structure has to be dismantled? And the thing that matters most may have happened in the process and not in the remainder. I'm not interested in answering these questions abstractly. I'm interested in the forms through which we live them. So I want to not begin with a theory, but with a place. We were in Greece, on the island of Kea, right here. And we were walking down an old road towards the sea. We had been learning about monuments and ruins and about Apollo and what remains when a civilization survives unevenly through fragments. We hiked for hours and hours to reach the beach and the temple ruins. We ate oranges and bread and olives, and we set the peels in neat stacks on marble blocks warmed by the sun. We swam in the sea with no one else there, and somewhere in that encounter, not exactly as an idea, but as a kind of recognition, we found the bones of the project that would become the oldest song we know. That project didn't begin with the finished form. It began with the way that many of our projects begin, which is by gathering pressure from multiple directions at once. We were thinking about ruins and about image skin and about American cities and about the vulnerability of civilizations and about songs and a structure that can be re-entered. We were also dealing with the practical reality of making work on an island with limited resources. We were testing underwater photography, selecting gear, mapping locations, figuring out whether we had enough tapes, whether we needed the drill, whether the housing would work, whether the water would cooperate. The project existed simultaneously as a concept, a choreography, a material problem, a technical workflow, and a lived situation. So we built a city out of coroplast and printed facades of American buildings. We carried it to the water. We tried to make it move in the way that we imagined it would move. And then this whole thing failed. The weather turned, the structure wouldn't hold, the water filled with debris. The contraption that we had built to stabilize the city fought against the sea instead of entering it. And so we had been hoping for a difficult element that would just work, and it didn't. And the next day we had to wake up and re-scout and simplify brutally and cut most of what we had planned and build a new choreography around the conditions that we actually had. And this is often where the work really begins for us, not in executing the original plan, but in discovering what the project becomes after the plan breaks. And this has been true across the life of our projects. We have spent years building situations that come together in this moment, and they may fail in interesting ways, perhaps. So, again and again, what persists is not the object itself, but the practice of remaking meaning under changing conditions. And that's why I keep returning to the Iglios epitaph. Because more than 2,000 years ago, someone carved that short song into stone, and the stone still exists, and the notation still exists, and the words still exist, but none of those on their own are the song. The song survives only because someone kept performing the relation between them. It survives because it can be translated, interpreted, sung, heard, and entered again. And it's not old because it was preserved intact, but because it kept being reactivated. And I think that distinction is important. I'm less interested in permanence than in continuation, less interested in the fixed object than the thing that can happen again, less interested in preservation than in transmutation. And what continues over time is almost never whole. It gets broken apart and redistributed and misremembered and rebuilt in another form and carried by another body, and it gets placed in another room and re-entered under different conditions. And that is also true of songs. It's true of collaborations, and it's true of performances, and it's true of artworks. So for a long time, I thought of this mainly through materials and structures. So what is the half-life of the things we make? What does it mean to build something knowing it will be dismantled? And what survives when the performance is gone and the set is cropped down and the architecture disappears? The deeper question is, what allows something to continue at all? So that question led us at another trajectory, in another moment, on another set of islands, to Finland, and to the project that became This Land is a Ship at Sea. One of the things that I'm going to share with you is that I don't actually know the slide order that's coming. So there's a little bit of improv that's happening across the board. We were in the Islands, and we were working with distance and weather and the strange clarity of the archipelago. And the landscape itself was already a kind of structure, intervals of rocks and water and small crossings and exposed surfaces and distance measured between islands. And the song wasn't simply describing the journey, it was the journey. It was an encoded timing, distance, rhythm, and effort. It told you how to get from one place to another, but it carried you through that duration. And I'm talking about a specific type of song that is possible in these islands. And it's a song that's used with navigation. And it's used to tell the distances between islands. So we heard about this song, or this type of singing, or this way of navigating between islands, because we met someone named John Wickstrom. And this is text from the Kalevala, which captures some of the Runo songs, which are thousands of years old, and were not actually written down until the 1800s. And then they became truncated, but really they're activated through this memory and this performance and tradition. But they're changed every time, and they're used in really interesting and different ways. So these are some illustrations from that. It's hard to get from one island to another island. So we met John on Trukar. John was 73 years old and rebuilding a Swedish wooden boat, and it was a sailboat. And he had chosen to forego treatment for his cancer so that he could finish restoring the boat and sail it until he met his end. And he said to us, "Nothing is a routine for me. Every day when I make myself porridge, it tastes as never before. My profession was as a sea captain, and I feel that this was a precondition for me to be able to express myself. The best time I had was when I was sailing on the North American line. It was my responsibility that the consignment was delivered safely through the rough seas of the Northern Atlantic. The dust and dirt in my soul, which I cannot reach, I try to cleanse by painting. Everything that I paint is a self-portrait." And this is a drawing that we made of John and thinking about him. John had lived as a hermit on Trukar for nearly 20 years without electricity or running water. He cultured his own food and fished and sometimes hunted and baked his own rye bread. And whatever he decided to do, he did. He built this boat and its sails by hand, and he was obsessed with dreaming about sailing it around the world. So we asked him if he would be a part of an artwork that we wanted to make while we were there on the island. And this is what we told him. There was an island, or the idea of an island, that needed finding. Any one of those islands could have been the one that needed finding, but there was no way of knowing without a boat or without the vantage point of God. It needed to be small, perhaps as big as a bus, not much bigger, big enough to hold one man, but not big enough to hold a shelter for that man. Big enough to stand or sit or lie down, big enough to sustain human life for a short while, or maybe if that man were clever enough, for some length of a lifetime. The day came when it was time to find the island and leave John there. The weather was very bad, a rolling fog and a sharp wind. And it was our last day on Shirkar. And if we didn't get John to the island that day, the idea of the island and the idea of John alone on the island would remain simply that. The captain called in the morning with the bad news of the marine forecast. It might clear up later, but without a good sea, there is no island. But the fog rolled out with the wind and left the sky blank and cloudless. It's now or never was his next call. Get John and meet me at the dock. Hours of travel, and Thomas, the captain, said, she's just ahead, your island. And there she was, as big as a house, alone on a sea, waves breaking hard against her rocky shore. We pulled up close, and John stood and leapt off the boat onto the rocks, and we backed away. He climbed to the highest point and looked out to the sea. Back at the boat, far from John's shore, we fought the waves and the constant constraints of the camera and took thousands of pictures. And Thomas joked to John, we're off, good luck, be seeing you. But we went back for him anyway. Later, I asked John what he had been thinking about during the hour or so that we left him on the rocks. I wasn't here, he said, but beyond the horizon. The soundtrack for that video comes from The Wedding Feast at the Great Hall, which is from a collection of these folk tunes from this particular island, Shirkar Island. And the song is not describing a journey, it is the journey. And I'll play you the video for that. In Finland, this sharpened for me. Some things survive by staying the same, and some things survive by being able to be done again. A figure on a rock, a constructed form over water, an island reached only by boat, a shoot that depended on timing, weather, and repetition. The work was not trying to preserve a singular object so much as to hold a relation across distance. A song, a vessel, a filmed event, a repeated traversal. These began to feel like different versions of the same problem. How does a structure carry you? How does something made in time continue, not by remaining fixed, but by being entered again? That distinction started to reorganize how I was thinking. The Seklios epitaph sits right at the threshold. It's carved into stone, but it's not the stone. It's a set of instructions that has to be activated. That notation is incomplete without the performance, and the performance is unstable without the notation. What survives is the relationship between them, as long as we have the ability to translate. The relationship feels much closer to how our work operates. So when we build a set, we construct a system. And when we invite collaborators, we're inviting them not just into the process, but to come together to try to produce something that's not a stable thing. We're trying to build something that can hold this set of conditions long enough for something to occur. And we don't know what that thing is. And then, when we accept that it will change or fail or just be dismantled or reconfigured or translated into another form, that's when the work happens. That way of thinking has also shaped how we work together. We have been together for most of our lives, and we came into the collaboration from different directions and with different trainings and different instincts and different areas of obsession. But over time, the projects that we do together became a place for those ways of thinking to meet and be tested. We don't really begin with a division of thinking or making. The making is the thinking. And we build structures to find out what they'll do. And we invite people into a process, not because we know the answer, but because the answer comes available at the level of relation and labor and timing and error and rhythm and response. So we're not trying to illustrate an idea. We're trying to build a condition in which something can happen that neither of us could have arrived at before. And this happens when we're working collaboratively here and when we're working with our other many collaborators as well. One of the clearest examples of that came for me years later in Providence when we collaborated with the playwright Rachel Jędrzejewski on this play called Marmy that Rachel had written. And she had been a performer in one of our earlier projects, and years later she reached out again, this time as a playwright, and wanted to develop a thesis project through large-scale collaboration. And what unfolded was not a conventional theater process, but or a conventional visual art process either. Early writing informed the installation and sound informed the continued writing. Actors, crew, playwright, composers, fabricators, directors, all worked inside of a temporary system that none of us controlled. And at the center of it was a 3-story cutaway house that was built inside of a 20-foot head that was based on a model of the lead actor's own head. And it was inside a former bank with 11 slide projectors, box choreography, a musical score, and a structure that could literally close around the lead actor. It was messy and super stressful, and it was generous, and it was absolutely alive. And what mattered most about the project was not actually the final form. It was the way that the work could continue by changing state. The script stayed with Rachel, and it went on to other productions and other companies, and eventually, last year, it was published into a phenomenal book. The installation and video stayed with us and became the remains of something whole, which is the project that you're starting to see here. And the head was dismantled, and then it was reconfigured. And the live performance, which happened 3 times in front of an audience, ended. And the meta work that was generated from the labor of collaboration remained, but in a different form. And the project became one of the clearest examples in our practice of art surviving not by remaining intact, but by being broken apart and re-entered. These are stills from the live performance with the actors who moved up and down, and they had 11 slide projectors that they were also wrangling live image feed changes during the play. They hated that part. So they said it was harder to learn their slide cues than their lines. So the work is not the object that comes out at the end. It's the structure that allows something to happen and then to happen again differently. Again, that realization brings me back to song. There are songs that survive because they're written down and songs that survive because they're sung. And that's not the same kind of survival. A written song can persist materially but remain silent, and a sung song can disappear completely and still continue, carried from body to body and voice to voice and context to context. In more recent work, that question has shifted again. We recently went to the McDonald Observatory in the Dark Sky Preserve in far west Texas. I'm still moving you through these. This is Marmy. And another version of it. All right. And as we went to the observatory to work on a project about pulsars. And the project became this collapsed and expanding breath. These are pretty fun. I'm seeing these. That's a black hole. This is a very early indigenous American way of tracking constellations. These are some early astronomy tools, which we love. And here's the Dark Sky Reserve. The McDonald Observatory is really a fantastic place. All right, so we were thinking about pulsars. And pulsars are stars that emit signals in precise intervals, detectable across vast distances. But before the project was an idea, it was a place, and it was here. And this is at the highest elevation in Texas. It's the windswept telescope town. The observatory domes cut into the landscape. The instruments are built not to possess the sky, but to gather light across incomprehensible distance. We listened to an astronomer who studies quasar light to gauge the metallicity of distant universes, who described discovering. We asked what was the most wondrous discovery. And actually, astronomers now, these days, look at a lot of data and not a lot of stars. They look at a lot of data about stars. But this, she described discovering a massive, unexpected cloud of oxygen that left her starstruck. And that changed the scale of the equation for us, not just what continues, but what keeps receiving. This collapsed and expanding breath came out of that shift. The project is structured around cycles of containment and release, and forms that swell and contract, bodies moving through fields of forces they don't contain. We wanted to reenact these processes and embody them in different ways. We wanted to bring in a performance, and we wanted to kind of stage it in a way that allowed chaos to come together, because the universe is full of these moments where chaos explodes and it expands and it looks like it's out of control, and then it finds order again. And we were really interested in those moments. We also have 2 very chaotic children. So we invited them and their friends to come and create this moment of collapse and expansion with us. So we staged this and had a kind of a suspended thing of these balloons in a star field, and then released them all unexpectedly and just let the kids do what they do. And it was a wonderfully chaotic and highly undirected moment for us. And at the same time, we asked them, at some point when you're done, put them back together again, and not really talking about what sort of big astrophysics principle that we're actually enacting or dealing with, but really just about something that bursts and explodes and disperses, and then needs to be brought back together again in some kind of order. And they did. And it was a really kind of a beautiful experience. So we paired that with this piece that we made when we were at the McDonald Observatory, which is making our own. We made our own radio telescope to listen for pulsars, which is an intentionally failed experiment. Of course, we can't really do that. So it's a way of projecting into what the experience might be like if we could do something, where we were listening to the universe ourselves. And this is how we showed the work, with these pairings together, which is something we like to do. We like to take one idea and let it explore, expand on, explain, riff with another one of the ideas that is at play. And so that's what's happening there. And during that process, too, we also showed this work, which is a series of equations. And they're kind of equations that, which I don't think you can quite see, but they're very important equations that help us explain things like escape velocity. And this was all part of like the research and learning about something that we really didn't know very much about. And as we're kind of teaching ourselves these principles, learning that escape velocity can be more than one thing. It can be something incredibly precise and specific, and it can also operate in a different realm. And so we created these sort of use for ways of thinking, in which case we were thinking about escape velocity as something you could use to drop your child off at preschool for the first time. That you're running away as fast as you can, but you get drawn back. So using things to think about other things in a loose way, in a way that doesn't have clear directions, and maybe also is designed a little bit to fail. So this feels a little bit like continuity in our work, is to kind of look at this through line of what is it about reactivating or moving back into something. So earlier this year, we lost our friend and collaborator, Rachel. And I have been thinking about how she defined the work of making art. And I'm actually going to go back and pull up this work that we collaborated on with Rachel. And I'm going to go back here, which we moved quickly past. But this is a theatron. This is because Rachel talked about theater and how she defined making a work of art. And in an interview, she said that she viewed theater in its etymological sense from the Greek theatron, which is a place for seeing. And in ancient Greece, theatron didn't initially refer to the stage or the actors or the play itself, but specifically to the seating area, the carved hillside where the audience gathered. And the word is defined entirely by the action of the people receiving the work. It's the physical architecture that's built specifically to hold the act of witnessing. So Rachel wrote that her goal was to build a hospitable place that facilitates sight and insight, and to keep seeking out new ways to create that kind of space over and over. So, back to the song. For 2,000 years, we've translated the first line of the epitaph as "while you live, shine." But those of you in this room, and I'm sure you all know this, that the original Greek word carved into that stone is, forgive my pronunciation, phaonu. And it doesn't just mean to give off light. It's an active command to come out of the shadows and to reveal yourself and to be seen. So in the context of this, it is most famously and poetically translated as shine, which is a little twee, it's sentimental. But understanding that its root reveals that it's not a passive instruction just to glow or be happy, it's a deeply active spatial command to step into the light and to be seen. While you live, be seen. We make art as a place to be seen, and we make art that can create that condition again in another time and in another place. And so with that, I'm going to end with our video. If I can go back to it. For the oldest song we know, which is here.
Az onzes
Thank you. I'm happy to take questions. I think we have maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah, we got
maybe we can have the light.
enough light to see raised hands, right?
There we go.
There you go. You have questions? You can applaud again, by the way, and I'm going to walk over here, but that's... All right. I could have gone faster. There you go.
Hello, thank you. That was great. I guess I'm just curious, what do you think the ancient Stoics would think of your kind of art and this kind of work?
You want to go for that? We might need to stand over here.
Well, it's such a good question. What do you think?
That's the other famous professorial retort. You know, I kind of feel like they'd be okay with it. I mean, I think it's trying. And we've talked a lot about that today. And I think we've had some really excellent examples and moments where I thought, like, yeah, that's exactly it. You know, we're never really trying to hit the target here. You know, and in fact, so many ways the videos are disappointments to us when we first see them, because we will try and have this idea of how it's going to come together. And then we'll look back and we'll see, like, oh, our friend Mintio is wearing red toenail polish, and like, and then, you know, there's this one place where Costa steps on a rock and he kind of shifts off the thing, and you look at the 5 other takes that were also not perfect in their various ways, and then you just kind of accept the results. And then, you know, years later come to really appreciate those moments as being kind of the moments that place them so specifically in place and time, and that it couldn't be another way. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I wish I said that. That was great.
Catherine has a hand up over here. There's a little bit of Heraclitus in what you're doing, isn't there? There's all that. It disappears while we're looking at it. Here you go, Catherine.
Thank you so much. That was remarkable. But I have a question. How does the work that you do influence your attitude towards life events outside of the art? I often find I might do some journaling and then I'll go out into the world and forget. So is there forgetting? How do you, is there a kind of a transfer over to other events?
Oh, yeah.
Feel free to take it,
yeah. I mean, yes, I think a lot about, and it's interesting to me to be coming at it in this direction, because if we were having this conference in the context of like specifically a visual art or an art conversation, you know, our work is very much in the sort of art. It's in, you know, social practice. It's about kind of these social sculptures. It's about something that's a little bit more rooted in relational forms that are very much embodied practice, where your living work is informing the work that you're making. So we kind of have to go and do these things and be there.
Okay, and also now I've got a beat to think about it. If you were noticing, I couldn't get a string around the glass sphere. It's just not. It's not going to happen. And so I thought to myself, okay, I can fail at this. I know I've got tape, but I know the tape is blue, and I know I'm working with a crystal clear, a silver, a reflective aesthetic that we've got. And the blue tape's foreign. It's different. We should not do that. But the tape is pragmatic, and it gets it done. And so it's moments like that, like this is going to bug me. Like all day, the tape is going to bug me. And there's part of me that I love that pragmatic, and it's a different aesthetic. It's funky. There's something unusual about that. There's a risk involved with that. Right. And so it's these irritants, the imperfections, And my life is not perfect. And I have those same irritants many times a day, particularly as parents, oh my goodness. And so I love in the aesthetic that we're working within to embrace the mishaps, the failures, the ways of seeing things different, oftentimes because we're forced to. And I am a perfectionist. I want it to be smooth, but I cannot have my way. And so trying to embrace that I cannot control.
Thank you. All right, one last question here.
Thank you. So I was just going to say, you said the art is in the making, and I was wondering is there a pursuit there to almost like maybe establish a new art form? Is that potentially the goal?
One of the books that I absolutely love is called Life as Practice. And it's just exactly that. There's such a wonderful tradition of artists who have their whole life be the work. And so whether, I love we both love Fluxus artists who, Allison, oh my God, why am I blanking on her name? Anyway, Make a Salad. She has an artwork that's an instruction to make a salad. And every time you make a salad, you're performing her work, whether you know it or not. She's claimed all salads from here on out, going forward. And so you yourself have made so many different, Alison Sicklow's piece, Make a Salad. And it's incredible. I love that kind of thinking. And that comes out of living in a way where everything you do can be part of the work if you think about it in that way.
Can I jazz with you? Because I like this question a whole bunch. I'm at a place in my life where, and I could be wrong on this is just my own personal belief, I'm feeling a reduced emphasis on originality and a reduced emphasis on innovation and an increased emphasis just in terms of my own interest in my own creative outreach and storytelling. And it might not be a new story, but it's new to me. And I really like having less emphasis on the unique, the innovative, which is, the last 100 years of art. Like, I guess in Cézanne, it's just like, okay, who's going to be the most innovative? But I feel like we're kind of in creative cul-de-sacs. And I feel like maybe there's a different way of being.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Megan and Murray McMillan. That was beautiful. I feel like my brain reprogrammed there, and it's going to take a while to recover from what happened there. My thinking just changed, and that's pretty awesome. So thank you very much for that. So obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but those of you who are looking at programs or listening to your borborygmus, that's your stomach growling. I knew you guys knew over there in the seats. But for those of you figuring out what comes next, lunch is what comes next, and we're going to break, and we'll be back. And I walked away from it. Thank you for the 1:15 thing. But because Melinda Latour, also, you have to applaud when I say her name. When Melinda Latour, she knows her way around. So let her talk a little bit about lunch and we'll hit it off.
All right, so we have a restaurant guide for you. There are local spots that you can go to that are easy walking distance. A very easy option is to go to one of the Tufts dining halls. They are open. The easiest one is if you go out the building and make a left, and then you just kind of keep walking, and you'll cross the little cross street, and you'll see it just over there. I believe lunch is around $20, just all you can eat with beverages and dessert and the whole thing. It's quite good. So here's what I recommend though, is, if you're looking for people to go with and you didn't come with people, kind of make it known. Stand out near the registration table and kind of look hungry, And if you have a group and you came with friends, I would just encourage you, look for those people and see if you can say, hey, come along. Let's go sit together somewhere. Exactly, there you go. So thank you so much, and we'll see you back at 1:15 in this room. All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you.